Hey, all my little psych loves. This is your Unit 3 review session, and try to get this done in 15 minutes. There are 39 multiple choice questions this time, and 2 FRQs, just like always. And make sure you use that SODA method for the FRQs. State it, go in order, define, and apply. And just a couple links to check out on the website. Mouse Party, we looked at this under the brains again, but you know, it's fun when you're looking at drugs to see these little mice on drugs. Trichromatic color vision, I think you'll see it's kind of animated. You're spraying somebody in the face and what he sees. And then signal detection practice is also a link that's on there. So good things just to help yourself practice. All right, so sensation process. This was way before Thanksgiving, so yeah, go back and review, although we have reviewed a lot in class. But we started out, your book actually starts out with the idea of psychophysics, how we try to measure these sensations. We try to make it a little more specific than, say, Wundt did initially. So make sure you know the 4 steps of the process: threshold, receptors, transduction in the brain. And within the thresholds, make sure you know about the difference between the absolute and difference threshold, also called just noticeable difference. And we did, again, activities in class with that. So, you know, if that refreshes your mind, that's always good. Which one does the signal detection theory go with? That would be the absolute threshold. And Weber's law would actually go with difference threshold. So be able to recognize some examples of both of those. I promise you those are going to be part of the multiple choice. Sensory adaptation. Okay? Normally that's a good thing. We get used to things, but we don't want it in vision, because then we would start to hallucinate. And if you remember from your reading the picture of the person with kind of the funky contact where that held them, it was at the top of the left-hand side of the page, and how they basically was like the same thing as hallucinating, yeah. And just, I can't remember if I have it in here or not, but also know the difference between sensory adaptation and sensory accommodation. In vision, accommodation, like an example would be, and we did this in class, but like looking at your hand, you know, up close to your face versus looking away at something far away, how your lens accommodates from near, from far. We want that. We want accommodation. We don't want adaptation in vision, but we do want accommodation. All right, transduction. This was the activity where we passed the tap on the shoulders, and there were 3 things in your notes about what speeds it and what slows it down, so I would review those. Parallel processing, we come up a few times with this. Parallel processing is unconscious. It's when within a single sense, how many senses? Just one sense. And all unconsciously we're doing all these things at once. And the example that I seem to always give is with sight, it's figure, it's motion, it's depth, and so forth are all occurring at once automatically. And then feature detectors, again, that's with sight only. They are located in the visual cortex of what lobe? Yes, I'm sure you said occipital lobe, that is correct. And they notice SAM, shape, angles, and movement. So please know that those are not located in the eye, those are located in the brain. Maybe an FRQ hint? I think so. All right, so anatomy of the senses. You won't have any diagrams, but knowing the anatomy helps you to know the function. And so that's a really good thing to know. You've got the outlines for all the senses on binder page 8 that we went through. Do make sure you know the receptor sites. It's not the entire sensory organ unless it's the skin or the tongue, but do make sure you know those. For vision, make sure you know what we practiced in class: fovea, cones, rods. Okay, so, all right, know where those are located in your vision. I probably tweeted something out for you on that. Sensory interaction, especially with taste, is the big sense where we have that, where it's overcome by other things. But also we have things like the McGurk effect, and balance is affected by sight. Accommodation, whoops, I did have it here. Make sure you know that, looking close up versus looking far away. We do want accommodation to occur. The basilar membrane is in the cochlea. And so that's in hearing, that's in your ear. Oh my gosh, I hope you knew that. And pheromones. This was something that I added to your binder, so make sure you don't overlook these. Those unconscious acting chemicals that repel us from those to which we are related, so incest doesn't occur. And then semicircular canals have nothing to do with hearing, only balance. So please don't forget that. Your internal senses, speaking of balance, that's also called your vestibular sense, and that's where those semicircular canals go in. And then body position or coordination, that's your kinesthetic sense, your kinesthesis. So in class, I think I had you close your eyes, lean your head back and try to point to your nose with your index fingers, and that gives you kind of an idea of that. And then for theories, make sure for hearing you know the difference between the Young-Helmholtz trichromatic theory versus the opponent process theory. Those are both with color vision. And then for pain, you had the gate control theory and how it's good to rub the area that's in pain so that the surrounding neurons send a message to the spinal cord and shuts the gate of pain. And then place versus frequency, those are both for hearing, and place helps us see, that's actually the place on the cochlea that helps us with high pitch, and frequency, how often the little hair cells fire, that helps us with low pitch. It's better with low pitch. And then the volley principle also goes with frequency theory. And then visual capture happens automatically. When senses compete, vision wins out. That's why you should not text while I'm talking. All right, perception. This is where the brain takes over. We had 3 phases. The first phase is selection or paying attention. We had the cocktail party effect. We had change blindness. We had choice blindness. Those are different than divided attention. With divided attention, you are trying to multitask, and usually doesn't work very well. Our brain has to switch, and it's just not so good. The second part of perception, there was a lot of stuff under this. Organization. How do we organize it? Well, there's 4 big areas. One area is depth perception, and within depth perception, we have both binocular and monocular cues. And for binocular cues, we have 2 cues. For monocular cues, I'm guessing we have about 5. So see if you can name those off. You've done a couple assignments on those, so look back at your assignments for help. For motion perception, we have the 5 phenomenon and the stroboscopic effect. Yes, you will have to know those for the multiple choice. The third area is constancies. That's again only for vision. In fact, all 3 of these, depth, motion, and constancies, are vision only. And so constancies, the idea that color, size, brightness, those, even though they change on the retina, we still perceive them as remaining constant. So even though if I'm landing in an airplane, the size of the car looks really small, I still perceive the car as staying the same shape. It's not growing as I get closer to the ground as the airplane lands. And then form perception, those Gestalt principles, these are the ones that can be in any sense. And again, you have a couple assignments where you've had to apply those. Interpretation is the final stage of perception. And so again, a new study on obesity looks for larger test groups. Get it? Because we know the context, we can look at it in 2 different ways. So within perceptual set, we have context effects. We had Mary had a little lamb for expectations. If I don't expect it to be there, I literally might not see it. We have cultural interpretations. Is that a box over her head, or is that just a window? And we have frames of reference, comparison. Is that guy tall? Well, I don't know. Who are we comparing him to? ESP, make sure you know the types of ESP. So if it's mind reading, then it's telepathy. Knowing something's happened even when you're not there is clairvoyance. Nostradamus seeing in the future would be precognition. And students wishing they could levitate papers would be telekinesis or psychokinesis, same thing. Altered states of consciousness. What are they, why are they altered, and how do they impact us? So make sure you know those properties of a conscious state. Make sure you can name them, explain them, apply them. Biorhythms are part of this as well, and so it's not just the circadian rhythm, although you need to know the circadian rhythm. You need to know the 90-minute cycle of sleep, but I would be aware that there's also yearly cycles and monthly cycles. For sleep itself, make sure you know the 5 functions of sleep. You had a good handout on this. It was not turned in for a grade. It should be in your binder. We have the 4 stages of sleep, so 3 non-REM stages plus REM equals 4 stages. Know the brain waves that are happening in those. And then for the cycles, make sure you know that we go through about 4 cycles if we have perfect sleep pattern, okay? And then the disorders. Again, those were part of a handout that you had. For dreams, which stage do dreams occur in? I'm sure you all told me REM. Lucid dreaming, you know you're dreaming while you're dreaming, and we looked at a couple video clips on that. The theories on dreaming. Why do we even need to dream? Well, we got 4 theories on that. Make sure you can explain each theory that not only tells us why we dream, but if we need to interpret our dreams. Freud was the biggest one with the interpretation. It kind of gets less and less important for interpretation as you go. Sleep cycle, this came from your book. Keep in mind that as we go down, stage 3 and 4 have now been combined and called deep sleep, but that see how they get shorter throughout the night, where REM gets a little bit longer. Then they had hypnosis. There were 2 theories on hypnosis. Divided consciousness, which was the dissociative theory, which says, yes, this is definitely an altered state of consciousness. And then we had the social influence theory that was just like, nah, this is just a role you're playing. This isn't anything new or big, or it's just, because you're super tired or drunk or whatever, it's easier to play this role of being a hypnotized person. What is it good for? There are several things listed. What is it not good for? It's not good for recovering memories or age regression or doing things you wouldn't normally do. Post-hypnotic suggestion can be helpful. How can I do well? If I hypnotize you and tell you you're going to study really hard for this test, then hopefully that will give you more clarity. Drugs, make sure you know there's a lot of things involved with addiction, dependency, withdrawal, that sort of thing. So make sure you just refresh yourself on that. And the categories for each as well. The 4 categories. And then finally, that alcohol impacts us greatly, multiplies the effect. All right, finally, FRQs, big concepts. Let's say if you're being tested on a sensory response, such as smell, can you not only locate where it's happening, okay, organ versus brain versus all these other 3 things, thresholds, parallel processing, Gestalt principles, but don't worry about connectedness. This is what your first FRQ will be related. Okay, you can probably figure out it's not going to be smell, but this is the kind of process you'd have to go through. The second FRQ will be something involving schoolish type thing. So for practice, talk about studying. How do you know you're in a conscious state? How can sleep and dreams and hypnosis and avoiding drugs help us to improve school performance? And then last but not least, as I'm running out of time here, fair game for FRQs. Make sure you know the difference between random assignment and random sampling. Not that you'll get one of those 2, and you have to, whichever one you get, you have to apply correctly. And then, this better be old hat for you by now, but knowing the IV versus the DV, experimental versus control groups, and that magic number of statistical significance of 5%. If it's below 5%, we know it is not likely due to chance. Whew, got it done. All right, good luck. Check my Twitter. I know you can do this.